Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. All right. I love the energy. Thank you so much. I'm George Akiyama, and I want to thank you for coming. This is the first all IT staff meeting I've had. And I got to tell you, communication is so critical to any large organization. We all know that, right? Kind of working together. And we've got 600 IT staff across the state. So we're going to have these meetings on a quarterly basis. I got to tell you, from a communication standpoint, I meet with the division chiefs, and you'll hear from them a little later today on a weekly basis. And then all the IT managers actually get together on a monthly basis. So we're going to do this quarterly. One thing I want to get kicked off, though, is a vote. So I'm going to start right here. We have an opportunity to vote for our next venue. I think some of the folks at home over the World Wide Web have already started voting. I think we've got about 40, 50 votes now. So you've got an option to vote for one of three districts: 2, 4, or 11. Come on. So what do you guys think? Just verbally, what do you think? Oh, come on. The only answer is 11, right? But vote with your hearts, right? So, because we do want to see where those votes ended up. Because we are going to hit the road every quarter. And this is how, what I want to do is allow you folks to choose, right? What is the next venue? Where we're going to broadcast from, right? Where are you going to send us? So I don't know if we're ever going to put Bishop on the list. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. I just got back from, I just got back from San Luis Obispo late last night. I got to tell you, I think we got to put that on the venue sometime too. Maybe on the next vote. And then, maybe it'll just be San Luis or San Luis or San Luis during that time. I want to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about myself. Certainly, I just started December 2014 with Caltrans, so happy to be here. Before that, I started my state career in 1995, where I worked at various organizations under various roles. I've had roles from, IT project manager, app dev manager. I was the CIO of the Fiscal project. How many of you are familiar with the Fiscal project? All right. I see some of us in the audience have actually worked on the Fiscal project. I'm familiar with you. So that was, a $1.6 billion ERP replacement project for the state of California. But, all along those roles, I've recognized the importance of communication and teamwork. So that's definitely one of the things we're going to continue to foster, in this environment. And part of that communication and teamwork is a little bit about, who we are as people. So I want to say, how many folks are aware? I've had conversations with folks in this room. Anybody think they're aware of my hobbies? Or, what do you guys think? I've talked to some of you. Any guess? These guys are laughing right up front. All right. Any guesses on hobbies or anything I'm into? Food is always good. That's my hobby. What are you saying about my weight? Any guesses? Travel. I do like to travel, right? I got to tell you, one of my first jobs come out of college was actually with Bank of America. I traveled extensively up and down the state, so it's nice to be able to get to places that I've traveled to before. Fresno, Wairika. I love little towns and big towns, so that's fun. Anybody else? Golf. I'm not a golfer. A lot of folks are, but that's just not my thing. Tennis. I play tennis horribly. Mary, you nailed it. I'm kind of a car guy, right? So I've talked to folks about cars off and on. I got to tell you, even in San Luis, I had a great discussion with a couple of guys. They're BMW guys. I'm more the Toyota guy, right? But anything car related, more than happy to talk about. And I know some of you are into vintage and collectible cars. So let's have that discussion. Car talk anytime. I also want to introduce our division chiefs. So Roger, can you come on up and talk a little bit about yourself?
So good morning. In case any of you don't know me, I'm Roger Westrup. I'm Chief of the Management Support Office. I've been with Caltrans 27 years in a variety of positions, including some acting assignments in District 1 and as the Chief of the Sacramento Customer Support Office. In addition, prior to coming to Caltrans, I worked for the California State University System in an IT capacity. And before that, for a small bank. And before that, I was an Army officer working in Army intelligence. And so on Veterans Day, if you want to ask me Army stories, I'll be happy to share. And I think that's about it. I'm married and have 6 children. I'm a local yokel, grew up in Sacramento, went to local public schools and to Sac State. I have a kind of a side interest in education. Some of you know I've taught in the community college arena for 22 years teaching developmental math, which is something that's really fun for me because I struggled with math in school, and this way I can help other people find their connection to math as adults. So that's me in a nutshell. Thank you. I'll be followed by Ron Clemens.
Thank you, Roger. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ron Clemens. I'm acting infrastructure division chief right now. I've been with Caltrans about 21 years. Prior to Caltrans, I worked for 10 years for private industry out of college and graduated from Chico State. I don't know who's from Chico State, but hey, Chico State grads. My interest, there's a few of you, yeah. Exactly. That's the old days, George.
That's where I'm from.
Oh, great. I'm interested in golf. All of you probably know me, know I love golf. And, Caltrans Golf Club's been around 53 years. I've been a member for 20. So I'm looking forward to, keeping that going as long as I can, even after retirement. IT is an exciting and challenging place to work. I think that's what drives me as an individual is the challenge of IT. And, we're always changing, we're always learning, and we're always going forward. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Next up will be Tracy Scribner.
Thank you, Ron. And for those of you who do not know me, I am Tracy Scribner, and I am the IT Solutions Division Chief. I've been at Caltrans not quite 2 years at the beginning of May, just in a couple of weeks. It'll be 2 years. I've been in IT for, which sounds worse, 30 years or 3 decades? They both sound pretty bad. Anyways, for a really long time. I really enjoy what I do. I love working with all the people. I like trying to make a difference, a positive difference in the organization that I work with. The last organization I worked with, I was there for 20 years, so I was looking for a bigger challenge, and I found it. So a little bit about me besides all of that. I'm a Sac State graduate. Yay. I was born in the Bay Area, Stanford Hospital, so I always wanted to go there but could never figure out how to put all my pennies together to be able to afford the tuition. So I wound up at Sac State, great college anyways. Personally, I love the outdoors. Anybody who has any conversation with me knows that I am an outdoor person. I love camping, being in the woods. We do at least a two-week ride every year on our quads. Usually go to Utah because you can actually ride your quads into town, get lunch, get breakfast, go shopping, whatever you want. I never have to get my Tahoe out of the garage. Anyways, thank you all very much. And next up is Victoria.
Good morning, everyone. Victoria Craig. I'm the Division Chief for Network and Security. I've been with Caltrans now 2.5 years. It is quite the organization to work for. Does things a little bit differently than the standards, so it's always a challenge for us. I've been in security, not only the Division Chief, but the Chief Information Security Officer for the department. I was in the very first information security office in the state of California. And this is when everybody was running around going hey, I think passwords, that's a good idea, So you can see from historically where we've come, it's been quite a progression. And now it's on every CIO's agenda and CEOs and presidents and everyone else. Cybersecurity is really the direction and something that we're all very interested in. Personally, I have been a Sacramento resident forever. We've moved around the country, my husband and I. We've had that opportunity to have jobs in different locations. But with that, we are, kind of born here and went to school here. I offer one thing to the department that is a holistic point of view, and I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Not only have I the state career, with decades, like Tracy says, I have a private industry career, so everything I've learned from there I bring back to government. I have an education career also. I've taught at universities, so I bring that back. And now being back at government again, I want to make sure that we take the best of the best and integrate them into the system. So that's it for me today.
Unfortunately, one other division chief couldn't be here today, and that was Sumi Smith. So you folks are all very familiar with Sumi. A little bit about Sumi. Sumi's actually a San Luis Obispo grad in civil engineering. So before that, after that, she's held various project management roles. I know she's run big projects. I know her from the Fiscal project. She ran several significant projects also at EDD. And for her, she's really into the PM stuff. She's heavily involved in the local chapter of PMI. On a personal perspective, I think she's an avid bike enthusiast too. So we're going to have to see how she does in May. And just out of curiosity, how many folks here are going to post up some miles in May? Are there folks who are going to? Wow, nice. All right. So keep your hands up out of curiosity. Who's going to put up pledge 50 miles, 60 miles, 100 miles, 150 miles? Wow, really? 400? How many miles do you think you'll pledge up for May's Bike Month? 500 miles. Anybody got 500 miles? Wow, that's impressive. Very good. So that's certainly coming up. Some of the things we're going to be talking about today, we've got 3 short subjects for you. We're going to be talking about kind of a hiring update. So that's on the people side of things. We're also going to be giving an update about ITIL, because we're starting an incident management process. And lastly, we're going to be talking about O365. So for me, it's generally, you can categorize things into people, process, and tools, and that's the order we're going to today. I'm wondering, do we have an update on the votes to see where we're at? And is everybody voting on the iPad that's making it around the room? All right, fantastic. I know we had like 50 votes before we even started. I know. District 11, is that the vote so far? 60 at District 11. All right, you guys are doing good out there. I love it. So let me talk a little bit about hiring. Certainly I know it's been a struggle. It's one of the things I've talked to many of you about. Right now we have about 80 vacancies, right, out of 600 staff, which is a considerable amount. Especially with zero-based budget exercise, if you folks have heard about that, certainly Department of Finance is making its way through Caltrans, right, and they're looking at our budget and looking at our efficiencies and looking at the widgets that we produce. So holding 80 vacancies, right, as they walk around, they kind of check our activity and what we're able to actually develop, can be a real issue for us. So what you'll probably see in the next few weeks, I'm looking at Roger, is a more concerted effort, right, to try to get those backfills done, right, to try to get folks, in the chairs. And actually those will actually create some opportunity for us internally as well. So, so look for that, right? I know we're going to be meeting with Chris Rojas and the admin team to see how we can partner together to try to get those backfills moving faster. All right, the other thing I want to talk about is incident management. So I've talked to some folks about ITIL. How many folks have taken ITIL classes or ITIL certified? All right. How many folks are familiar with ITIL or have heard of ITIL? All right, so certainly, the IT infrastructure library is a framework, right, or a standard for how IT organizations can conduct their business, right, in a best practice manner. So many organizations are moving towards ITIL, and we certainly are going to be one of them as well. Now, one of the first things we're going to stand up is incident management. Now, incidents are classified as things that are unplanned events, right, that happen to us. I'm not going to call anybody out, but certainly we have advantage that comes up or doesn't come up on time periodically. So that would be an incident, right? And what's our routine? What's our framework for handling those types of incidents? Well, under Sumi's leadership, she developed a kind of a base framework, right, for how we're going to handle those incidents across IT. And you're going to start to see some information about that, right? You're going to start to see some training around that, how we're going to handle those incidents from a common framework perspective. And that'll be the first leg of ITIL. But, ITIL, IT service management, is certainly something I think you're going to see more and more of, and it will give us a very common framework across the state to conduct our business. There's going to be some training that we're going to start to offer. I'll tell you, you can either get training, from private vendors, like New Horizons, but I also hear OTEC is starting to offer training at a very reasonable price. So as we start to develop our training plan, if you have an interest, I would say, work with your supervisor, your manager, and we'll start to get some ITIL classes out to folks. So that's I think that's it for me from a hiring, right? And also from an ITIL perspective, incident management, I want to introduce Ron to talk about Office 365.
I know many of you have a lot of questions about O365, and my statement about my personal interest in IT is challenging, right? Well, we're going to do another mail migration in the department. We're faced with challenges like this all the time. All of us react to incidents that occur, and in January, the California Department of Technology announced the availability of a vehicle to procure Office 365, O365, a suite of products. And this project that we're going to do for the mail migration, we're going to focus only on mail. I know there's other products within the suite, but our focus for this effort will be O365. So timeline, everybody's saying, well, when are we going to migrate? Well, that depends. I know it's hard to give a succinct answer at this time because we're still in the initial phases of working with the California Department of Technology and Microsoft and defining what that is. In fact, yesterday we just met for the first time with all of what we're calling Wave 1 and Wave 2 departments. There was about 14 of us in session yesterday with Microsoft and CDT talking about what our phases are in the project. So first we're going to do a discovery phase, a remediation phase, meaning prepare our infrastructure. We're going to do an enablement phase, meaning let's turn on and light up the services we need for this to work. And then we're going to be doing migration and finally closing in this phase. So migration timeline, we're predicting July, August timeframe at the very latest. Wave 2 ends in August. So we should be migrated in August, and a lot depends on whether we meet the criteria for the waived process. So we have a lot of work to do. Good news is the migration should be pretty seamless to our users. There's a few things that might occur if you leave yourself logged on. You might have to reboot Outlook a couple of times. OWA is going to have the newest version of Outlook or Exchange on it, so that'll be a little different interface. But all in all, we're just really moving from one cloud, which is a shared cloud, to what we call our own tenant space, which is our own personal cloud. It'll give us a lot of options, and I think it's really exciting. Our team is put together. We have Jacqueline Moore. We're happy to have Jacqueline Moore. She's had many successful projects in the department, and she's our project manager, so we're really happy to have her on board. And we're starting to form weekly meetings with our project teams, which includes Wide Area Network, the Identity and Access Management Group, because Active Directory, of course, is the basis for how mail works and policy works within the department. The other services with O365, we're working with the executive team to really try and plan out which ones we may want to phase in which order, right? They're all individual projects and large efforts because there's a lot of communication that needs to occur. There's a lot of infrastructure considerations, the Information Security Office, what effect that's going to have on our bandwidth, all of our firewall rules. There's just a lot of considerations. So instead of trying to boil the ocean with this, rolling all the products out for O365, we're focusing on mail so that we can be successful and get that done and meet our deadlines and criteria. So if you have any questions on O365, feel free to email me directly, and I can try and get those answered if I haven't covered it here today. But thank you very much, and I'm not sure who's on the agenda next, George. But
we're checking the vote. So I'm seeing where we're at. We had, I know before we even started this broadcast, we had about 50 votes. So what are we up to now on the vote count?
Up to 70 in District 11.
Up to 70 for District 11?
28 in District 4. And
wow.
7 in District 2.
All right, District 2. Wow, I'm surprised at that. That's good. So it looks like District 11. But, at the end of this broadcast, we're going to be done. The voting's going to be done. So get your votes in, because that's where you're going to send this team, for the next broadcast. Now, we were also able to take some questions ahead of time. So at this point, I think is that Roger, Tracy, and Victoria are going to come and respond to some questions. And we've got time for a couple of questions from the audience here locally, too.
Thank you, George. So I was asked to address just a couple of quick questions. The first one was about opportunities for rotations, mentoring, and shadowing someone from another IT group. So I can say we're already doing some of the rotations. You may be aware or may have worked with people or even been someone who had the opportunity in kind of this pilot phase of this to be able to work someplace else for a short period of time and gain the experience. That included not only headquarters people going to the districts, but also some district people coming to headquarters. We're developing some lessons learned from that so we can not only build a framework around it, but make it something that's meaningful for everyone. So there'll be additional information coming out about that. There's a mentoring program in the department, but more important for IT people, there's a mentoring program that is being stood up now as part of the IT Leadership Academy. And so we will have some more information about that, which we'll be sharing with you. But I think that's a great opportunity to connect with people, particularly in other departments. It's always, I remember when I was in the Army, I had a boss that used to quote General Patton all the time who said, "One look is worth 1,000 reports." And when you get the opportunity to look in some other places, it really gives you some insights. And then the shadowing we also think is a good idea, but we want it to be something that's meaningful and beneficial for both the people that are being shadowed and the people that are shadowing. So it's not just a, let's spend the afternoon wandering around kind of thing. So there'll be some more information about more formality surrounding that as well. The next question I was asked to respond to was the IT picnic, and I want to let you know we are planning another IT picnic this fall. And we encourage the districts to do the same thing. And we are looking at some regional activities for the districts where we get some of the district people that are closer together in one place so they can have the same kind of experience that we're able to have up here in headquarters. And then finally, there was a question about the IT budget. And I know the budget is a big concern, and George alluded to the zero-based budget exercise, which is coming. I know that all of you have heard from your managers about the importance of tracking what you do and appropriate timekeeping, because now that activity-based budgeting activity that we've been doing is something we're going to take to the Department of Finance and show them what it is that we do. In addition to that, some of you know that we've had KPMG on board doing some work for us, and one of the efforts that they had was around total cost of ownership. And so they've prepared some great information for us to share with finance about what the real costs of IT are in our department. And I'm sure it'd be no surprise to any of you that there's additional funding that's needed in the area of IT. So we'll be exploring that as well. All right. Tracy?
Hello again. So we looked through all of the questions, and unfortunately there really weren't any that were specific to IT Solutions Division, so I took a couple of Ron's. The majority of the questions were either MSO or infrastructure, so next time, give me some questions. Don't make them too hard, though. So I have a couple of questions, and they're actually related, and actually having Roger go right before me was perfect because his budgetary comments feeds into one of my answers. So I'm going to read the questions first. PC and laptop refresh replacement plans and the compatibility of CT applications with the new Intel Skylake processors. The first question I had was, what is that? So I got a little education on that one. The next question is, what is the bigger plan for moving to Windows 10? Now, I thought that would be a pretty simple, straightforward question and answer. Not really. So related to the first question around refreshing all of our desktops, I know that John Katayama and his group under Ron had put together a refresh plan, which took into consideration all of IT's desktops, laptops, things like that, and put it into a 4-year cycle. He had there was methodology behind it. Do we do, the oldest computers first? Who's the biggest need? Things like that. So he has this plan. Unfortunately, this is where it relates back to Roger, is we have budgetary constraints, and until we can determine where we are with the budget and where we're moving, how we're moving forward, and actually put together some money for this effort, we're on hold with that. The next question was around the Skylake processors, which ties directly into the Windows 10. Now, according to Ron, my source over here, the Skylake processors are a new chipset that they're coming out with, and it's linked to Windows 10. Windows 10 can run without it, but can Skylake run without Windows 10? No. Okay. So moving to Windows 10, the good news is that infrastructure team's already working on this. Because we have some Surface Pro 4s in-house already, we are working on the image, and the team, Dave Logan's team, is working hard on that, and they actually predict that they will be done with their part of it, standing up that image within the next couple of months. And then, of course, it's going to go through some rigorous testing, which all of the districts will help us with. But because Windows 7 is our standard right now, it's not really because of, but Windows 7 is our standard right now. And that's what we're going to continue to use for the next year or more for our desktops, meaning PCs, laptops. The only thing that we're going to use Windows 10 for at this point in time is the Surface Pro 4s. As we move forward into the future, we will be looking at the Skylake technology and see what impact it has on any of our applications, as well as look at a plan for rolling out Windows 10. It's not going to be a trivial thing. I have Windows 10 at home on my desktop. I went from Windows 7 to Windows 8 to Windows 10. I like Windows 10 a lot better than 8. I think that's what the general public are saying as well. It's not trivial. It's very different from Windows 7 that we have on our desktops today. So we envision that will be a project moving forward. Thank you for whoever put up the question around the Skylake and impact to our applications. That was the one, question that actually kind of related to my area. But we really do say that we have to have this as a project moving forward. So we don't see it any sooner than sometime next year, late next year most likely. According to my wonderful resource, the Skylake technology in Windows 10 as a standard for Microsoft is not going to be released until mid-2017, so which is next year. All right, and with that, I'm going to pass it over to Victoria.
Okay, so actually I love my question that I got. And so whoever wrote this, I would like them to write another one like this next time, okay? It came from headquarters. And the question is I would like to know what each unit does within IT. What applications they support, what skill set or knowledge that they need to have to support that function. And then maybe per our meetings, our quarterly meetings, do like a profile or a bio of each one of those units. And then it will help us know what we do internally. So I thought about this, and I thought, well, fantastic idea. Love it. I would like to, though, propose that we maybe take it a little bit further than this at a quarterly meeting and maybe engage Tracy's team, and where we can start putting, if we start looking at bios or such for each one of the different business units here, then we can place it in an area where other people can start learning about us too. Because really, this tells us what we do, but it's also what services we're providing, right? It kind of lends to each other. So if we have people in headquarters asking the question about, what do all the business units do here in IT, then I know that question must be being asked out in the districts too, right? And conversely, back and forth, what do they do? And then within our customer base, all of Caltrans customer base, our programs here, then this is a way for us to also share and educate with them what we do to support them. So I didn't pick a unit or anybody because this would take a little bit of time to gather that type of information. But I want to bring it to our executive management meeting and see if we can get agreement that this is something that we would want to maybe interject into each one of our quarterly meetings, and then how else we can share this information. I would love it if somebody that does graphics or those kinds of things could help us develop what that profile page would look like. So if you have those talents, please come and see me. I'd love to have your input. So thanks.
Oh, all right. I think that's all the That's a subset, I guess, of the questions we received ahead of time. I'll tell you all the questions are going to be responded to and put up on the web. Again, Tracy will find the appropriate place for it. We've got time for a couple of additional questions from the audience. Does anybody have a... All right.
I wanted to ask, why were you actually going through the effort of replacing desktops when you could virtualize the desktop experience?
You know, the virtualization is certainly a technology I think we're going to start moving to. You know, one department that I know of, if I can leave that here, one department that I know of, I think water had actually gone to virtualizing the desktops. I think that's part of our future play, but, you know, for the near term, I think we've got so many things on our plate, we may not get to virtualization. It's certainly something I think, Ron, maybe we can look at to see if we take that broad jump to virtualization now, or do we continue, right, to kind of replace our desktops and do the refresh and look at virtualization in the long run. But yeah, great question. We should be looking at it as far as we can. Anyone else? Come on, you're not bashful when I see you in the hallways.
So, with all their
I think for the audience will need you. Yeah, it's really for the districts because they can't hear you on the broadcast.
Is this one working too?
Yep,
Hello?
either one.
All right, there we go.
All right, here we go.
Question I have in regards to the vacancies that we have.
Oh, yeah.
What is the big holdup with HR right now in terms of getting our vacancies posted? Because I know there's been a few managers who have actually tried to post different things or send packets in. And I know that recently testing got one through that they've advertised, but we've had a position vacant for quite a long time, at least since I think the end of January when one of our guys retired, and we still haven't had a posting for it yet. And we'd like to see that position filled, A, so we don't lose it, and B, because we could kind of use the extra person on hand. You know, we did a lot of shuffling of schedules and different things to fix that problem in the short term, but we'd like to be back to a full staff, and we kind of wondered what's the holdup with HR on that end.
That's a great question. That's the very question I want to find out too, right? So as we have that discussion with HR, we're going to determine, you know, kind of what's slowing down the process for them and how can we help, right? I think under Roger and Sabrina, they've actually gone as far as to say, hey, do you want to, you know, work together, maybe borrow some of our staff, right? How do we get through this all? As I talk to Chris in general, right, some of the things I hear, it's some of the issues that we have in IT as well. Even though some program areas grow, you know, IT and admin are not areas that get PYs traditionally in DCPs, right? So their volume of work continues to increase, you know, as they're constrained by the same number of staff. The other thing, if you guys heard about ECOS? And show of hands, anybody heard about it's the new online hiring system? So the state went to an online hiring system, and they're trying to navigate the waters on that. Well, actually, IT had gotten an early preview, the IT managers, of what that system will be and how it'll work. And I think statewide, not only Caltrans, but other departments are working their way through the process is probably the nicest way I can say it. So I imagine if our HR department is really the tip of the spear on that, right, then that's something they're having to resolve for everybody, you know, all 19,000 employees. But I feel your pain. You know, I'm right there with you. You know, we've got 81 hires, and that also brings up a connection to, you know, what do the units do, right? So if we're going to hire 81 folks, it sure would be nice if we can onboard them some way, right, so they have an understanding of what all of IT does as they come in the door.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Great question. Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question. You guys good? All right. Come on up, man.
Good morning. My name is James Hunter, and I wanted to ask about, I've been put in charge of inventory of IT, and during the process, it's been a problem for a long time with space. In order for me to inventory what is on the desk, I have to remove the things that are under the desk. And if we could have some allocation of space to hold things in order to move them on to survey or to surplus or to reallocate to other agencies or divisions,
yes,
it would really move the process along a lot better. Right now, we're putting things in spaces that are not filled and they're not locked down, so things continue to move without my notification. So I was wondering if there's any time spent on area or space for IT to move surveyed accordingly.
Yeah, I think we're constantly looking at space, to be honest with you. We're looking at, I forget the name of the space, Royal Oaks, right? We're looking at Royal Oaks now, and I think they've got a cage and some other facilities there. But I also hear that there's an issue with DGS on surveying stuff.
DGS's rules and regulations,
yes.
Which are changing. We have landfill now, and a lot of recycling ways of taking care of surveyed items. But due to that, we either accrue money to these, they pay us, which we really don't want, or we're paying out. That's another area in which I think the divisions need to take care of their own surveyed equipment. Right now, IT picks it up, and we accrue the cost. So with that, again, it's another thing of looking at how we take on the surveying as a whole. And I think it has changed a lot over the last 5 or 10 years, in which we do need to look at the process a little different and see if we can come up with some better.
I think it has changed substantially. I've heard there's been some recent glitches in how we survey equipment, and some of the DGS requirements have changed, and it may be on individual analysts. I'm looking at you, Ron. I don't know if I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about that if you have any responses to how the DGS surveying has ended up. But I know even as I go out to districts, I was recently at San Luis Obispo, and they're moving into a new space, and they're also getting a reduction in their current space, right? They affectionately call it the squeeze. But space continues, I think, to be an issue for Caltrans overall. And I know Roger and I actually went out and took a tour of all the facilities we have under IT. And, and I talk with Glenn periodically about our space needs and how we can be better at it. But certainly something we're going to look closer at to see if we can resolve that. Thanks for bringing that to the table. But do you want to talk about DGS survey?
That's a great question, James. I appreciate that. Recently District 3 is reaching out to us for direction as well. And like George mentioned, I think some of the rules and the perceptions, people change in their jobs, people interpret things differently. And I think what we have as a challenge right now is, our policy right now to shred hard drives, right? When we do that, we effectively negate the value of the machine, and we really can't donate it to DGS, and they really can't reuse it for schools and other charitable organizations. So John and I had a discussion yesterday in response to District 3's bringing up their space needs, and they're really precluded right now. Their dock is full, just like our dock is full. And that's one of the things I'm going to bring up with George in our one-on-one is, what is our approach here? Because in John's estimation, I think there is an avenue by which we can call surplus dealers. And I think DGS is also amenable to that as well. So if we're continuing our policy of shredding hard drives, which, from an ISO perspective, that's the best thing we can possibly do because, wiping drives, there's still that vulnerability. That's still that unknown. How was it wiped? What was the level of wipe, et cetera. So in getting space freed up so that we can move equipment in and out of our organization, I think we do need to come up with a revised new look at how we do this, how business is done. And really, the important thing is adherence to DGS and the SAM policies and procedures and manual, right? We really need to be lockstep with that. So we're going to be looking at what is that change that's happening, and how can Caltrans best move forward with that. So thank you for the question.
All right. All right. Speaking of space, I think one last thing we have to figure out is where are we going to next? Who won the survey? I'll get out of the way of the screen here. There it is. Surprise, huh? District 11. Darn it. I think we're going to need a couple of weeks to set that one up, though, because, I've never been down there, so I don't know what the room looks like. That'll take a week, right? But this really concludes our meetings today. I do want to thank Joyce, Ed, Jay, and James for all their help with this. I got to tell you, you may not know this, but in some way, we've got the Lexus, right, of staff who help with these items. In fact, that we help the governor as he goes up and down the state as well. So I'm so thankful to have all you folks here. You do a fantastic job, and I appreciate that. This concludes our meetings, but the division chiefs and I will be around if you have any other questions. You want to walk up, and we'd love to engage you.